Hello and welcome to this episode of Small Business Small Talk. I am your host, Christy Smallwood, and I want to welcome you to another episode. So for 2020, this has been one of the best years ever as far as podcast interviews go, because I have a lot of great people and a lot of wonderful stories to share. A lot of let's commiserate together, but let's also look forward to the future together. So what is Small Business Small Talk? It is a show that should educate you a little bit, but it should also inspire, empower, and slightly entertain you to be able to jump into your day a little bit better as a small business owner, developer, whatever. And with that, I also want to thank my sponsor partner, and that is the Chamber of St. Matthews. I am an affinity partner with them through Eagle Eye Strategies. And so part of that partnership is they have become sponsors of Small Business Small Talk. So a lot of my guests are also members of the Chamber, including my guest today, who is kind of a rock star in our area for networking for sure. And what he does, he's award winning. So I've been watching the feeds. You and your team win awards all the time. I want to welcome in my guest, Jeff Elder with Jenpale. It's LLC, right? Just Jenpale LLC. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we have blingage.
We have blingage. So just a little, too bad you guys don't get to be a part of the little green room before we hit the record button on these things, because I finally just had to say to Jeff, we got to stop and start recording because we're already having such great conversation. We just got to go with this. So welcome into the continuing adventures of Jeff and Christy's conversation on the Small Business Small Talk.
True story. And for those who don't know either one of us or both of us, we always have good conversations when we're together. We've lived a lot of similar experiences in life, and we are people that tend just to cut up and have a good time when we're together. So it's always a lot of fun. So I appreciate the invite.
It is a lot of fun. So for the purposes of this particular interview, go ahead and give our listeners a little bit of a backstory for you, because I know you and I've talked about like the radio days. So
yes. My 16-year-old daughter affectionately refers to me as the BA dad who's had just about every job, and I've explained to her that it's not because I've hopped jobs, it's just because I've done 3 jobs at a time most of my life. So
exactly, same.
I've done a little bit of everything. I've worked in construction. I've worked as an electrician. My first job ever when I was 13 was working in roofing and concrete. I wouldn't wish either one of those on anybody that I didn't like. I have worked in rock radio as a jock. I worked for WTFX, and I'll pull up my radio voice for a second and say 100.5 The Fox. So that was the station that I worked for as an on-air personality. I co-hosted a weekly hard rock heavy metal show, which was great because as a radio personality, you get to step into character for a couple of hours and let out all of your just BS from the week, and you get to come back and you're a whole new person because you've gotten to be a raving lunatic and idiot for a couple of hours.
And people enjoy that.
They do. They really do. I worked with a great team of people over there. We had 5 of us at one point, all hosting the same radio show. All 5 of us are still really good friends today. So we, it was a great experience and a lot of fun. Got to meet and hang out with a lot of people, Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne. I've done interviews with everyone from, Chuck Schuldiner from Death to Lemmy from Motorhead to, different people. So there's some great backstories there. It's a lot of fun.
Nice. Okay. So your current business is all about insurance.
Sadly so. It's not nearly as entertaining as my previous jobs, but it's a necessary thing in this life. So we do employee benefits. We do corporate employee business or benefits for businesses as small as 2 lives. We do have some mom and pop businesses that we write. We're one of the few local brokerages that will take small businesses. A lot of brokers will tell you that businesses under 10 lives or businesses under 25 lives are too small. They don't make enough money for their effort. I'm a little different. I see myself as a business partner for the people that I help. If I'm a good business partner to them, if I help them the right way, the business of 5 today is 50 tomorrow. And quite frankly, at that point, if you're 5 today and 50 tomorrow, you're less likely to fire me because I helped you get there. So it builds a certain segment of loyalty. And I really just enjoy helping the community. So it's nice to be able to help people get a little bit of relief and realize that yes, they can afford an employee benefit. A lot of small business owners come to me and say, I'm not even sure I can afford this. Okay, well, that's fine. Let me do some work here. I promise you we can come to something to where you can help some way and still be able to afford it. And since you mentioned your affinity partnership, Jenpale LLC is also an affinity partner of the Chamber St. Matthews. So
That's
we
right.
have an affinity partnership as well.
So help me as well as some other maybe new people to business understand why insurance is still labeled an employee benefit.
So it's labeled an employee benefit because, and maybe it shouldn't be, it might actually be more of an employer benefit than an employee benefit because you have the ability to retain the best of the best. You have the ability to hire the best of the best, especially in a competitive field. Really before COVID world where everybody started laying people off and whatnot, we had a pretty booming economy. And one of the things that I hear most often when I'm out there dealing with business owners, and I know you probably do too as a business coach, I can't find anybody. I can't find anybody who wants to work. I can't hire people. I can't get people in here. Okay, well, let's talk about why. It's because Amazon gives you first day benefits, and they're paying on the similar scale, but they've got a benefits package on top of that that's second to none. So, what does that look like if I give you a benefits package that can compete with Amazon's? Well, you don't have Amazon's pocketbook for sure. I get that, but what if I can do that and keep you within budget? To give you an example, we did a client recently that was a local landscaping business, again, very small. We probably had 10 lives with him. And we went through the St. Matthews Chamber Affinity Plan for health insurance. We were able to get that company a plan that had a $250 deductible, which is almost unheard of these days. The most they could spend at a given year out of pocket was $3,200, again, about half of what a normal plan would be. The pricing on that plan, they were paying $210 a month. So $105 a month to the employer and $105 a month to the employee. They wrapped that up with a affinity plan from Colonial Life that gave them dental vision. It gave them life insurance. It gives them short-term disability, which if you don't offer disability right now in COVID world, you're going to lose your employees. They're going to go somewhere where they can protect themselves if they get sick or hurt. So we're able to wrap all this up, and all this business is paying is $105 a month per head. Now, if you don't have the $105, I get you still don't have the $105, but to be able to build a benefit package like that and be able to compete with something like with what Amazon does for that type of cost is almost unheard of.
That is pretty incredible because I know I'm still currently for the next couple of months a one-man shop.
Sure.
So, I myself, my entity doesn't fall under any of that kind of stuff, but I will soon. So it's good to know. But okay, so let's talk about that whole because when we talk about benefits, we're looking at sure we have health insurance, dental, vision, and you also mentioned life. But let's talk more about that disability and COVID stuff. So because at the beginning of this, I knew a lot of the insurance people like that whole industry, everything has been upended on everybody. So at the beginning, nobody knew how to handle policy things and all that kind of stuff. That's why we still don't have live events, because insurance doesn't cover that kind of liability for live events. So let's talk about have they already adapted to something like COVID within that disability thing?
Now, keep in mind that what you're discussing, what we're talking about on the side for liability is property and casualty insurance. So property and casualty insurance and life and health are two different realms of the same industry. So on the property casualty side, to be totally honest with you, no, they still haven't figured out what's what, because not only do they have COVID to figure out, but they've got looting and riots to figure out, which if you don't have a business, if you don't have a specific rider in there for your business policies, that may or may not be covered. So they've had to scramble on the property and casualty side a couple of different directions to figure out a couple of different evolving threats. The health insurance side, they have really figured out pretty quickly. Most carriers, almost every carrier, has gone to a format where they said, look, if you're being treated for COVID, we're gonna, it's 100% covered, there's no out of pocket. Where it hasn't helped is, God forbid, and we have several people that have been clients that have been diagnosed with COVID, and thankfully to this point, all of them have recovered, but they've had to miss time off work. So
Right.
if you're missing, 2 weeks, if you're missing 5 weeks, if you're missing 10 weeks, the question becomes, how do you keep yourself afloat financially while that's going on? And the answer to that is going to be short-term disability. So many companies don't offer it because they assume that they have to pay something towards it. They pay that, they assume that, that there's some sort of, headache or hoops that they have to jump through. And that's not necessarily the case. Now, don't be wrong, an employer can pay for short-term disability, and that's great if they want to be able to do that, but it's not a necessity depending upon the carrier. One of the carriers we use for the affinity program is Colonial Life. That carrier allows us to offer it guaranteed issue. They can't be turned down. It does have a pre-existing conditions clause. So basically anything you're treated for in the last 12 months is specifically excluded for the first 12 months of the plan, but it's not gone forever. Some plans will exclude it forever. And it's something that, really it's better for them to put in place sooner rather than later. They have to do a payroll deduction, but they don't have to fund it, and a lot of places will tell me, well, we don't know that people will participate. I just did a company that works in the construction trade field that told me that they had a serious problem getting people to participate with their health insurance. Well, the reason why is because they were offering an individual product as a group product, which is very popular these days. Be very careful. If you're offering a group product that is able to turn people down for underwriting, then it's not really a group product. That's not allowed.
Okay.
But there are carriers that position their product that way.
I did not even
And
know that existed.
yeah, it's not a good thing. So I mean, basically, we went into that same company that had trouble getting participation, 1, 2, 3 people to participate, and we had over 80% participation because it was actually a decent product that was being offered. And even outside of the health insurance world, though, in the ancillary world, the disability, the life, and all that kind of stuff, people sometimes say, I don't know that my people will participate. And I'll use the company name here because I know Sue wouldn't mind. The AAA Roadside Assistance, the AAA Rescue Rangers, is a client of ours. And when I first met Sue and Russell Johnson, the owners, Sue told me that she wasn't sure that her guys would see a benefit in participating with that type of a product. And we ended up first year over 80% participation, and she was blown away by it. She was like, I can't get my guys to participate in health insurance, yet they're buying this. I said, well, number one, your health insurance is a heck of a lot more expensive. Number two, even if they have coverage somewhere else, if they're on Medicare, if they're on a spouse's insurance, a lot of these guys are former military, so they have the VA. These products still help because it's putting money back in their pocket as opposed to paying doctors and hospitals, and a lot of them see that as a benefit. So it's not perfect for everybody, but there's a lot of situations where it's better for the business than most people would think. And of course, there are business upsides. If a business funds a portion of a benefit, they're able to write that portion off, et cetera, et cetera. I tell people on the write-off portion that I have many designations behind my name. CP&A will never be 3 of those letters. So you should always check with a tax professional. But I'm pretty safe saying that pre-taxing, especially in health insurance world, can save businesses a lot of money. And it's some of those things that business owners don't think about when they think about the affordability.
So you started out that whole conversation with it's more of an employer benefit. How much of a struggle is it to get business owners to see the benefit of having a benefit for their people to keep good people?
It really depends on the owner. Some owners totally understand it, especially in skilled trades. They get it. They're out there fighting for everybody. Those people are jumping back and forth between employers because it's so competitive. People who are in different industries that maybe haven't always been competitive, it's a little more difficult. I just did a company where I had a conversation with the business owner, and we got to Colonial Life for pre-taxing. I said, this is a good idea to wrap this up because Colonial Life will manage your pre-taxing documents for free, and all you have to do is offer their benefits, and the benefits you're offering are just going to add value anyway. So it's kind of a win-win-win. And so she was like, well, I don't know that we're interested in that. Okay, well, that's fine. And a lot of people will hear that and they say, yeah, I'm in, 100%. Well, what I had to explain to this person was, okay, here's why you want to pre-tax. And I'll give you kind of the lay person's view of pre-taxing. Right now, if you make $1,000, you pay taxes on $1,000. If you make $1,000, you pay $100 in insurance that's pre-tax. You now pay taxes on $900, which basically lessens your tax liability, puts more money back in your pocket. And even though you're paying the same thing for the insurance, it feels like less. Here's why it's important to the employer. Health insurance is fairly expensive. You're putting out a lot of dollars for health insurance more often than not, especially if you're covering a family. Whatever that employee is not paying in taxes right now, if you're an employer, especially if you're in a municipality like J-Town, Middletown, somewhere that charges an extra surcharge, because J-Town charges an extra 1%. So if you're in a municipality like that where you're having to pay, and even if you're not, you're paying, half of their payroll tax, but you're basically absorbing some of the self-employment tax. So as an employer, if that employee is not paying that in taxes, you don't have to match it, which means you're putting money right back in your pocket to help fund the program to start with.
Okay. So even I understood the math of that, and I don't do math quickly in my head. It's
Me either.
Relationship with math. It's like a slow build.
Sure.
But even I understood that. So I think this is one of those things, like, how often do you meet with business owners? Do you do like an annual check-in to get them to understand the math and how that compound? Because to me, it looks like a compound effect. If I'm paying attention every so often to see how this is all playing out, the numbers add up, literally up. Like for me,
they will. So the short answer is yes, we do a yearly check-in with everybody, but we don't do it necessarily from a pre-taxing standpoint. So we'll give you payroll deductions. We literally, one of the businesses we wrote recently is like, well, how do we figure out what to deduct? I'm like, you're not going to do that at all. I'm going to hand it to you on a spreadsheet, and you're either A, going to put it in yourself if you manage your own payroll, or B, if you have a payroll service, you're just going to literally turn this spreadsheet over to to whoever manages your payroll and say, here you go. If you don't have somebody who helps you manage your payroll, or if you don't like that person, or if they give you any guff, let me know and I'll recommend somebody who can. So, it's truly a partnership from that standpoint. But I tell people all the time, I want you to do three things, and I don't want you to do anything else. I want you to pick a product, and I'm going to help you do that. I want you to, to enter your payroll deduction. Again, I'm going to hand that to you, and you're going to hand that, to whoever takes care of that for you. And I want you to pay your bill. Other than that, what you're not going to be doing with us and our company is we're not going to say, okay, it's open enrollment. Here's your stack of stuff. Fill this out and get it back to me. You're going to go present it to your employees and tell them everybody what's going on this year. I don't want you doing any of that. Number one, that person's not licensed, so it could be construed as that person attempting to sell insurance without a license. Number two, it's absolutely awful customer service. I'm being paid as your broker to help you manage your insurance needs, and that's not managing your insurance needs. And number three, we actually come and sit down with every single one of your employees and explain, this is your health insurance. This is your options that are available here. This is your option that's available there. So they get to ask us questions, and then we guide them through the enrollment process. We finish everything up, and then we give them our contact information. I tell them, I don't want you going to HR with questions. They're not insurance people. If you need help, you contact us. It literally takes everything off the plate of the employer that we possibly can take off the plate of the employer. Now, does it keep them from ever asking the employer questions? No, not necessarily, but they can always say, here's his number, call him. Don't
just call Jeff. I don't know the answer to that. That would be my answer. Just call Jeff. Isn't that what he told you to do? Where do you me?
You pay attention next time he says that. So
right. What meeting did you attend?
Right. So, and the way we do that, a lot of insurance brokers will come in and hold these group meetings. And the problem with group meetings, I mean, they're fine. If that's what you want us to do, we can do that. But the problem with a group meeting typically is it shuts down your entire operation. So we'll come in, we'll pull employee one at a time, return them out. One at a time, return them out, or two at a time and return them out, or however many at a time. We'll get through them quickly, but it's not shutting down your entire operation as a means of having that done.
Well, and it seems to me, because I remember back in the day, the employee days, right? And
Sure.
I was in the businesses that had the group meetings. They handed you your forms, fill them out, give them back to us. We'll get you set up. And that was the process. I can't imagine how different my life would have been if I had actually somebody to walk me through a process that helped me ask better questions. Like I didn't even know what to ask. And so here I am now, a business owner, not knowing any different until I come along with somebody like you that has all of this insight and you do it differently than what I have experienced in the past. And even my mind is blown right now. I know you and I haven't had the insurance conversation because we always talk about everything else. So
cartoons are important, Chris.
Cartoons are very important. In fact, I'm sorry you said Rescue Rangers with AAA, and I immediately went to Chip and Dale.
Chip and Dale, right? I do the same thing. It's not just me.
The song was in my head the whole time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the whole time I'm seeing chipmunks in Hawaiian shirts. The whole time I'm there.
Yes.
So yeah, I totally get that. It's a great conversation to have, and it's necessary to have. I realize it's not the most entertaining thing. One of my jokes that I tell people is like, all right, I'm going to finish you up here, and you can go on to something more entertaining than talking to me today. I can only be so charming while I sell insurance. And it's true, but it's still a necessary conversation. There's a lot of people, life insurance is a great example. There's a friend of mine who's a broker in Indianapolis who has a signature that says, my job is to ask you about life insurance. Please don't make it my job to tell your family you didn't have any.
Oh,
and that's poignant. So many people, I sat with so many employees, usually they're males, that tell me I'm not leaving her anything. I don't want her using that on another guy. And I'm like, if I were your wife, I would leave you immediately because you obviously have no glimmer of care for her whatsoever if you would leave her in that situation. But we also have people who say, I'll do it tomorrow. Well, the problem with that is, number one, life insurance is never cheaper than it is today because it's age rated. Number two, and I'll tell you from my own experience, I declined a life insurance policy at age 33. I never dreamed that by age 34 that I would never be able to qualify for a life insurance policy ever again.
Oh.
And there are things that will cause you not to be able to qualify for life insurance. It's better to buy it when you're young. It's better to get it done. It's better to lock it in. And people will say, well, I've got that at work, and that's fine as long as you can take it with you. More often than not, those life insurance policies, they're not portable, they're convertible. If they convert it, your rates go up. People will let it go because their rates went too high for them to be able to afford because it converts to whatever age that they are. And now they're stuck without. So, it's fine to have the stuff at work because it's inexpensive. You can buy a lot. It's guaranteed issue. That's great. But it's a great idea to make sure that you have coverage on your own as well. That's one of the very few individual things that we will do for people is life insurance because it's so important. And GoFundMe is not a life insurance plan.
No, but I have an interesting story. I'm not sure how funny it is, but so I was married at one time in my early on 20s. And I had, before I got married, at age 19, I actually got myself a life insurance policy. And it was like for $20,000. It's like I added it all up. What would it take to bury me? And all, so all of the expenses of my end of life would be covered. Nobody'd have to worry about it. And super responsible. Go me. Then I got married. I was like 23, I think. I was 23. And we sit down and had that conversation with another agent. And he chose to not get life insurance, but he made me double mine.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, look, I was in my early 20s. I had no idea what red flags even meant at the time. So
sure.
Looking back, I was like, wait a second. He was planning something and I didn't even know. Thankfully enough, like 2 years later, we were no longer an item. So it didn't last super long.
You and I have had this conversation because we've been friends for a long time and we've known each other way back to the One Southern Indiana days that, when I got into insurance, I didn't want to get into it. There was two industries I didn't want to be in. I didn't want to sell insurance and I didn't want to sell cars, both for the same reason. They both had a negative stigma attached. Whenever I thought about an insurance salesman at the time, the first person that popped in my head was from the movie Groundhog Day, and it was Ned Ryerson. And I didn't want to be Needle Nose Ned or Ned the Head. Unfortunately, the head thing happened anyway, and I couldn't control that. But what I could control was being the annoying person who was always just in your grill trying to talk to you about insurance. But I found out after going into insurance that I could do it and, number one, obviously be ethical, and number two, still help people. And the helping people thing made a lot of sense to me. And that's why you mentioned awards earlier. We won the 2019 Better Business Bureau Torch Award for Business Ethics. Out of all my awards, that was the one I wanted. That was the one I felt the best about. That's the one I was most coveted. And I was really super proud. I was actually in tears the day I was told that I won that, because you don't hear insurance and ethics too often in the same sentence.
No.
And people don't, they don't know behind the scenes what they don't know behind the scenes. But, I have employers that call me and they want me to get them insurance under a group rate, but they don't want to offer it to their employees. And I actually have to tell them, look, you want a different insurance broker, because I'm not here to help you screw over your employees. I'm here to help you. So, we have people who will do things. I actually got advised by another insurance broker one time to do some things that were very unscrupulous to get a policy issued on this group. It's like, well, here's how you do that. You can do this and this and this. I'm like, well, Mr. Insurance Broker, what you're describing to me sounds dangerously close to insurance fraud. And I told my client, I said, look, I've been advised that there's a workaround for this, but I also want you to know that if you accept this workaround, that you're going to no longer be my client. I'm going to transfer you to this other broker and he can do that for you. And here's why, because quite frankly, if you lie on a plan, if you lie on an application to get an insurance policy, number one, you're breaking federal law and you very well could go to jail. But on top of that, especially in a health insurance policy, God forbid, if you're diagnosed with a $4 million cancer claim, they're going to research you. That company is going to make sure that they actually owe you for that claim. And if they found out you did something unscrupulous to get it, guess what they're going to do? They're going to deny the claim, and they're going to be well within their rights to do so. And you're going to be stuck with a $4 million bill. So is it worth it to bend the rules today and get a little bit lower of a price if you get worked over tomorrow and end up with $4 million? I don't think so. And that's before we ever get into the idea of losing your freedom. So yeah, I mean, it's just not a good idea. So one of the things I've always, been very prideful of it is the fact that, we are extremely ethical. We're always going to do the right thing by our clients. We're going to make sure we help you with the policies that make the most sense. But we're also not going to help you, harm somebody else. We're not the benefit company to come to if you're the guy who wants to cut your employees out or work them over somehow. You're not the client we want.
So what would you say has been, since entering in this business owner stage of life, what would you say has been the biggest challenge you've had to overcome?
For me personally, it was just getting used to the idea of going from being a sales agent, somebody who sells, to somebody who manages the day-to-day of a business. I talked to another friend of mine who's thinking about doing it. And I told him, I said, look, I'll be happy. You can call me anytime. I'm more than happy to give you ideas and tips and different things to help you run your business. It's like, but man, so much of it was just trial and error. So, I was great at selling policies. I was great at talking to people, What I wasn't great at was processing payroll, negotiating leases and, all the things that as a carrier rep, those things were done for me. So, I will never accuse myself of being the smartest person in the room. I am the guy who is, I've got some great ideas here and there, and I can help tweak great ideas here and there. But there's no Harvard degree behind what you see here. And you mentioned being bad at math. There's a reason I use 1,000 and 100 as my numbers as opposed to actual numbers, because I'm bad at math too. So that was really my biggest challenge, was really stepping into the how do I own a business role. And I know that that's what people like you exist for, is you actually help people do things like that and figure out how to start things. Because obviously my wife owns a business as well, and she owns a franchised business, so it's very different than mine. And I told her,
Totally different. Yep.
there are things I can help you with, but there are things that I'm not going to know how to help you with. So,
Yeah, working within a franchise structure is definitely different.
it's
It's supposed to be turnkey.
supposed to be, but not always. So yeah, there's definitely challenges there as well. So we definitely appreciate people like you being in the community, because we're able to come to you and talk to you and ask you questions and bounce ideas, and you're tremendously helpful. So we appreciate that.
That's what I'm here for. Love to do that. I know I'm looking at my bookshelf, and it's leadership by the book, or entrepreneurship by the book, something like that. It's an older book, and it was written by a small business owner, and he said his best mentors in the business were trial and error.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
those two little gremlins are really good mentors.
They're very good at training you fast. And the funny thing is, it's not funny. It is, but it isn't. People like me, I'm in continuous learning all the time to make sure I stay on top of not only foundational truths in business, but the trends of new technology or movement in the marketplace and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of my job to try to keep up with everything. But the bottom line is, there are certain things like there's could be two business coaches in the marketplace. We have two totally different personalities, two totally different methods of getting to from point A to Z. And so one gets a structure, one creates a structure, right? So it's two totally different ways of how do you do, and all of it is just trial and error. We can hold to those foundational truths all day long. Like, you need to, take care of yourself before you take care of other people. You need to have payroll. You need to have insurance. You need to have an attorney on hand. You need to have a CPA. Like, you need to have all these basics, but then everything in between can go anywhere and everywhere.
So true. Yeah, I'd tell you more about my bookshelf. I'm in my home office though, so my home bookshelf and the one in my office are radically different. My office bookshelf has things like Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer and The Call of the Wild, but it also has The State of the Game by Denny Crum and Access All Areas by Scotty Ian of Anthrax. And I just got Rust in Peace from Dave Mustaine of Megadeth. I got an autographed copy of that book. So my home library is very different than my business focused library in my office at work.
I think I still have, because at one point, I also have a certification in music business. And so I have music books here as well. And I think one of the books I have is called This Could Be Your Band. And wasn't there a punk rock group, Black Flag?
Yes. Henry Rollins fronted that band.
That book was about that band. I was like, super fascinating.
If you like, speakers, motivational speakers, anything like that, Henry Rollins is a fabulous motivational speaker. And you wouldn't think about, him being necessarily a great speaker, because he was basically the front of a punk band. But one of the most intelligent people. I don't always agree with what he says, but I don't always agree with anybody that I listen to, so you take what he's saying with a grain of your own understanding. But he's such a smart guy, and he's been in movies. He's a good actor. He does all kinds of different things, but he's a fascinating guy, just overall. And he's one of the people I've never met, but I'd love to meet him. He's a tremendous person.
Who would be on your I'd love to meet list?
Oh gosh. Let's see. I've met a good deal of people. So the people left on my I'd love to meet list. Probably Marty Friedman. I'd love to have met Nick Menza. Both of them are. It's a guitarist and a drummer from Megadeth. Unfortunately, Nick Menza I will not get to meet because he has passed away. Corey Taylor would be interesting to have a good conversation with, the singer from Slipknot. My daughter has a picture with several members of Slipknot, but Corey was not amongst the members, so I didn't get to talk to him that day. I'd really like to be able to have a conversation with some of the women in rock because I love female
Yeah.
fronted bands. So my daughter's met Amy Lee, but we have never been able to have a conversation with her. She has pictures with her, but we weren't allowed to talk to her that day. She was in a hurry to get through different people and whatnot. So I get that. But there's so many really interesting people out there. I would love to have a sit down conversation, honestly, with Ice Cube. I think Ice Cube would
Oh,
be
really?
fascinating to talk to. Ice T would be on that list too for the same reason. Both of them have very interesting perspectives, having grown up on the street, but both of them are
Yeah.
super smart. You could add Dr. Dre to the list too. They're super intelligent. They've obviously shown that they have an acumen for business. They've avoided a lot of the pitfalls that have hit other people. And if you told me in 1985 or 1987 that Ice T would be best known for playing a cop on TV, and if you told me in
Right.
1987 that Ice Cube would be in children's movies, I would have told you both people were nuts. So if you talk about somebody that transitions to what life throws at them, look no further.
Honestly, we have those great examples like that tell us we can adapt and we can make our choices. We can either use our powers for good or
Mm-hmm.
not.
Spoken truly like a Wonder Woman right there.
As part of my thing, I have to remind myself that all the time. I have a choice here. I can either use this power for good and that if I don't feel like being the good person that day, I'm like, we don't need to go out for the safety of everybody else. We just need to stay here and not talk to people.
One of my most unendearing or unendearing qualities, depending upon who you ask, is that for better or for worse, you never usually have to wonder what's on my mind. I'm usually very outspoken, and I'm not outspoken from a hateful or disrespectful standpoint. I just love having great conversations, and I love differing opinions. I'm not one of those people who tells you have to see things my way. One of my very best friends, he's one of the people I respect most in this world. He's a former agent of mine, has very, very different viewpoints on a lot of things than I do. He's a young guy named Demetrius. He's super smart. He was always way too smart to be in insurance. He's actually working for a law firm now. And he's one of those people he's one of two people that I've met in my life. Anna, my wife, is the other one, that if you tell me that you've met them and you don't like them, I don't wonder what's wrong with them. I wonder what's wrong with you. So, it's somebody that we talk a lot about the state of the world. We talk a lot both, about our little girls, because he has a little girl as well that plays volleyball. We talk a lot about politics, and we don't always agree, but it's fascinating to hear his viewpoint, because if I don't listen to a dissenting viewpoint, if I don't understand where he's coming from, if I don't take a walk, in his shoes, how in the world am I ever going to understand the world overall? And it's amazing to me how many people in our world today will completely shut down and not listen to any viewpoint other than the one that they see eye to eye with.
Yeah.
not to be political, but there's no way possible that you can elect anyone that you're going to see 100% eye to eye with. It's never going to happen.
It hasn't happened yet. I don't know why
No.
people have that expectation.
It's just not going to be. So what you have to do is you have to pick out the core values that are most important to you, and you vote on those important core values, and so on and so forth. I used to say, when Bobby Petrino was the Louisville football coach, I've met Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino was not my favorite person to have a conversation with, unfortunately. Having said that, I didn't pay Bobby Petrino to be Mother Teresa. I paid him to win football games, and he did that okay, at least the first time around. The second time around was a little dubious. So, it was one of those things where, you're paying them to do a job, and you kind of have to take the good with the bad. You understand that person might be a jerk about certain things, but if he does a good job doing what he's paid to do, then you kind of have to, maybe swallow a little bit of the other stuff along with it.
Yeah.
But I just love listening to differing viewpoints on things, because I learn things that I wouldn't have thought of.
So what's the best piece of advice you've gotten in life so far?
My mother had a saying, and my mother is no longer with us. She passed away in 2010. She is from the hollers of West Virginia, is where she was born. She was born in a little bitty town called Ranger. Most people can't find that on a map. And believe it or not, if you go to Ranger, West Virginia today, because she's also buried there, the cemetery that she's in, you cannot get to unless you have a 4x4 vehicle. First off, it will tear the transmission straight out of your car. You will not get up the hill otherwise. But she had a saying, and it wasn't necessarily a business saying, but it's one that I love in business because it makes so much sense. And the saying was, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. So it works in insurance because if you think about, some of the big brokerages out there, and I'm not slamming the big brokerages, they all have their place and they're perfectly fine. But, the one stop, we do everything shops,
Right.
And it even encompasses over to some payroll companies now. ADP and Paychex do insurance and all that kind of stuff. So the one-stop shops that do everything, there's a reason I don't have a property and casualty license. There's a whole bunch of rules that go along with P&C, and there's a whole bunch of rules that go along with health and life. And I've never met anyone who sells both types of products and is super good at both. And it's because there's too much overload. People are human. They can only do so much. So the person who's trying to do everything is what they call a hog. That's the person who's going to fail in business or just be mediocre, and they're going to cost themselves in the long run. So I am the pig of the day, and I even have pink on to prove it. So the pig is the person who, for me, I don't have a property casualty person in my shop. What I do is I have great referral partners who do property and casualty, and that's what they do. That's their forte. So I know that if I send somebody to one of them, they are going to get the best service the same way that they're going to get the best service on the health and life side from me. And to me, I would much rather bless my business partners with that business and much rather grow my network that way and much rather take care of my community that way and help another small business owner out than to just be like, mine, gimme. Yeah, since we're talking cartoons, the first thing I hear when I hear mine is I go back to Finding Nemo, those little seagulls, mine. So the whole point of that story, though, is pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. I'm going to do much better as a business owner if I stay in my lane. And there's actually a piece of artwork that hangs in my office that says, be the king of your trade and not the jack of all trades. And it's there to remind me that pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered.
That is so just appropriate. And I look at my own business because I have 4 folders of business over here. Mm-hmm. And it seems like 4 separate businesses sometimes, but it's all under one umbrella of strategy. Like we start with strategy first. And if it's something it doesn't fall in that folder for me and my team to work on it, we don't do it. I do refer that out, but I'm like, am I getting too hoggish over here with the 4 folders? Like, but I'm like, I've been paid to do these things. Why not these are 4 folders I enjoy doing. Why not keep doing it? I'm good at it. So why not?
The difference, though, is that you recognize your limitations. So you are good at referring to other partners when you say, hey, this is something that maybe I need to bring somebody else to the table on, as opposed to, to give you an example, if somebody in the property casualty world, one of the hot buttons right now is medicinal marijuana and dispensaries. Now they're only available in certain states, but there are some carriers in the property casualty world that will not touch those because they're still federally illegal. So, unless you have some sort of a specialty, unless you do it, you're going to have a hard time placing that business because you're not going to know which carriers are best for that industry. So, in that case, you're so much better off to say, you know what, I'm going to pass up this piece of business to make sure that they're taken care of properly and call somebody else in on it than you are to try to tackle it yourself and blow it up and fumble it and screw it up and make, and give yourself a bad reputation.
So you talk about referrals. Okay. So you and I, before we started recording the podcast, you and I talked a lot about the networking aspect of things. So let's go there. Like you had mentioned, being part of an elite group means that you're one of those people that are referred to as being seen everywhere. I'm not, by the way, I just make it look like I am.
For those watching the podcast who don't go to chamber events, she is lying right now. It's not often you catch Wonder Woman in a lie, but we just did. So mark your calendar for the day.
Lasso's over there on the right. Nobody needs to know.
She's trying her best to snow you, and it's not that time of year yet.
So for you, I know, again, you'd also mentioned our 1SI days. And so for those that are not local necessarily, we're in Louisville, based in Louisville. And so we share that river. And
Yes.
there's one Southern Indiana encompasses multiple counties in Southern Indiana as a chamber. And then, of course, over here in Louisville, we have multiple chambers, of which Jeff and I are affinity partners for the Chamber of St. Matthews. And St. Matthews is in the region number 3. Like, we're pretty big. Because we encompass a lot more
Are we
counties.
3? I thought we were 2nd now.
No, I think we're still behind.
Doggone it. Well, we have to work on that. We'll get some members out of this podcast for Suter.
That's right.
Awesome.
We're not behind by much. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
one of the things about having the affinity partnerships is that if you're a chamber member, you get to tap into all of those discounts and stuff, all of the extra special benefits that we are the smart ones to provide for chamber members. And so it's just a benefit, not only to become a member to tap into the benefits, but we're pretty active. And so when we talk about networking stuff, how much has networking affected your business?
Networking is probably the core of my business. So when I started life as a carrier rep way back when, so I had a representative that used to work with me, and I almost felt like it was a disadvantage for him to see that I got referrals because he was newer in the business than I was, and he was just starting off, and he kind of saw that as the way that things came in. Now, one of my many jobs among the years was I was a real estate agent at one time, and I came in, I was a 20-something. I wasn't old enough or mature enough to truly, embrace that opportunity. But I worked for an outstanding broker who'd been in for almost 30 years at the time. And he's a gentleman named Rick Nix. And I was always blown away that people were just coming to Rick and saying, hey, I've got a house for you to sell. I need to buy this. I need to do this. That floored me. I never understood that until now, because what I didn't see was Rick putting in work for years and years and years to build those relationships and get to know those people. So for me, people see now where, like Jenpale LLC right now, I would tell you that almost 100% of our client roster is referrals. Almost every single one. We don't cold call. And when I say we, I mean me, because right now I'm the only person actively seeking business. But we've had other agents that come in and they see that people call me and say, hey, I've got something I need here, or hey, I've got a person I want you to meet, or hey, I've got somebody that you need to see here. And they just assume that that's kind of the way it is. They assume people pick up the phone and just call the insurance person. Well, what they don't see is the fact that I was putting in 16, 18-hour days. Instead of managing a business back then, it was knocking on doors, getting to know people.
Right.
So when I first came in the business, I met my district manager at the time was a gentleman named Sean Colon. Sean fascinated me because he knew everybody. Blew me away. We could go out to lunch. We could go, we could be out of state, and we would run into somebody that he knew.
Somebody knows you.
And that just blew my mind. I couldn't believe that was a thing. And so we're going through this list, and he tells me, he goes, here's the people you want to call on, and he says, here's, you want to start with all the business owners you knew in high school. Now, Sean went to New Albany Providence. New Albany Providence, for those of you who don't know, is a small private school. It's on par for the local people with a Trinity or St. X as far as an alumni network goes. They stay in touch. And so I had to explain to him very very, very softly the differences between New Albany Providence and Louisville Southern, which is where I went to high school. And, I'm very proud of Louisville Southern. I still live in the area, and, I love my alma mater. We don't have much of an alumni network to speak of. It was
my little bitty rural. No, we don't do that.
it was kind of a rough school, and so I was joking with him at the time. I said, the businesses that my people that went to high school with, is like, I don't know that I can insure all those. So, there are some that might be a little hinky, for us to try to insure. But so talking to him, the point was, I made my oath that day. I said, you know what, I'm going to get to where I'm Sean Colon. I want to get to where people know me. So I worked my butt off. I was at everything I could possibly attend. I started at 1SI, became an ambassador. When Josh came over to the Chamber of St. Matthews is about the same time that I, opened my brokerage here in Louisville and moved away from the carrier world. So I followed Josh into Chamber of St. Matthews. I got to know everybody in the chamber, and we belong to, I think the last count, it was like 10 different chambers. So we belong to a bunch of chambers. Not active in all of them, and it's, certainly not as much as I'd like to be. But we get a chance to where I go to a lot of networking stuff. I see a lot of people. I'm on a lot of Zoom calls. I'll do everything I can to meet new people because, number one, I love meeting new people, but number two, that's the growth of my business. So for me, networking, there was a lot of trial and error. I had to learn how to network properly, and instead of just walking up to somebody and going and saying, here's who I am.
Oh my gosh, we could just have a whole 5-hour long conversation on what not to do in networking.
Yes.
Right. Just don't be the person that does certain things. Like if you didn't get to talk to everybody, not everybody needs your business card. Like don't just pop into a circle of 10 people that are having a chat and throw your business card at everybody.
Here, bye.
If you're looking for a job, do not take your resume with you. Like take an actual, just a business card. Let's connect later. Like it's the face-to-face making that first impression, kind of feeling out. Do I even want to talk to this person? And what do I want to know from that person? Not just the business of what you have to offer.
It is such a shame that networking and job hunting and some of those things are not taught in high school. If you think about the things we don't use from high school and the things that we could use if they were taught, that would be, so like my daughter hates the idea of insurance. I'm like, hey, maybe you can, come into this one day. She's like, no way, not a chance.
She's still a little rock star right now.
She is. She's definitely a little rock star, and that's okay. I don't mind that either. But she, she tells me that she's like, I don't want to do what you do. I'm like, honey, you already do what I do. I watch you going around and networking with all your friends and, doing all this talking. The only difference is you're not getting paid for it. So you absolutely do what I do. I apologize. Apparently, one time that someone is actually going to call my house phone in the 30 years is going to be now. So
they're trying to sell you insurance.
Give me a moment and I will silence
Oh, that is so funny. Okay, so as for not necessarily even new people, but like we've been in business long enough. If you've been in business if you've made it past the 2-year mark, like you've learned a tremendous amount about business and what works for you and what doesn't work for you, because every business is different. Even like I said before, even if you're in the same industry, you're different than your competitors. Like you just function differently. So for business owners out there, what would be your biggest piece of advice to them besides what you shared about your mama?
Find your own way. And so like you just mentioned, everybody's going to kind of do things their own way. So Anna, my spouse, she's part of a franchise. They've got this whole system, but there's still things that she has to do her own way. She's going to interject. And for those of you who have never met Anna, you're missing out. She is just a very personable, very bubbly, very, there's never a conversation you're going to have with her that you're going to walk away saying, God, I feel worse for having that conversation. You're always going to feel uplifted. She's very happy. She's one of those people who just kind of keeps you straight. And just a tremendous person. But so not every owner of a tutoring franchise is going to have that same personality. They probably should, but they don't. It's just the ability for her to put her personal imprint on that business. My personal imprint was the difference in, I just learned different styles of doing things from working in voluntary insurance versus health insurance and how they enrolled things and so on and so forth. I learned through that. You were talking about going to the big job earlier and having, the packet slammed on the table. I took that same experience from some of my jobs, and I remember looking at 3 plans listed here, and I have no idea what the difference in the 3 plans are. So let me just choose the cheapest one. Well, the cheapest one, sometimes cheaper is just cheaper. Otherwise, it gets called less expensive instead. You have to realize that it's less expensive for a reason. And who do you go and ask that question to? You don't have anybody to go ask that question to. Okay, so what if I'm the person that, instead of doing it the way it's always been done, is now the person that you can come to and ask questions? What if I'm the person who, instead of, ignoring the email for a week, responds right away? What if I'm the person who allows you to text him, and if you text him at 7 o'clock at night, you still get an answer? So every industry is going to have its own niches that you can certainly get into and expound upon, but so much of that is just adding you. Add you to your industry. If you add you to your industry, you're bound to be in a good place. Yeah, unless you're just a terrible, rotten person, in which case you're going to fail, and that's okay. So,
People, that would be the villains, and I don't do
yeah. If you're Lex Luthor, well, you know what? Actually, we're not going to use Lex Luthor. He was bald. He looks too much like me. We're going to use the Joker.
Use that example.
We're going to use the Joker. So, if you're the Joker, you deserve to fail.
So for you, Jeff, I know we've talked about family and business and a little bit of background. What then does success look like for you?
Success is very, very different for me. So number one, people assume that I make tons of money because I'm in insurance. So let me first tell you, for those of you who think your broker's living high on the hog, if I sell you a top of the line policy, or if I sell you a bottom of the barrel policy from the same company, I get paid the same rate, same monthly amount per head. Okay. So to give you an example, if I sell an Anthem policy here in Kentucky, I'm probably going to get $14 to $17 per head per month. It does not matter if you spend $1,700. So it's not a percentage commission. It is a per person per month enrolled, or actually it's per employee per month enrolled stipend.
Well, that's a whole lot of people you need to pay bills with.
Yes. So I
have a lot of calculator for that. I was like,
there's a lot of people you got to enroll.
That's a lot of people.
It really is. So, whenever you have something like that, I always tell people, like, just understand that I'm selling you what I think is the best plan for you. And the reason why it's paid that way is to somewhat discourage that. They don't want you, selling somebody a plan they don't need because that you get paid more commission for it. And that's fine. I don't do it anyway, but there's just a big difference in somebody who's out there selling for the dollar and somebody who's not.
So what I'm hearing is money's not really success for you.
Yeah, I'll never have a $500,000 home. I just won't. I actually live in the same home that I grew up in. I bought it from my mother. It was built in 1985. My family is the only family that's ever owned it, and I'll have a hard time getting rid of it because my family is the only family that's ever owned it. The home is okay. I have plenty of space. As a matter of fact, I have 3/4 of a basement that I don't even use now. So what do I need to add more into? I don't need the status symbol of life. I drive an okay car, as long as it's big enough for me to squeeze my butt into, I'm okay. I don't have to have vacation homes or whatever else, as long as I can, my goal in life, because I grew up super poor. I grew up in a situation where we had foreclosures. I remember standing in the cold to beg for money to keep the heat on in my house. I remember stealing so that we could have food to eat. And so I guess my version of success is a little skewed. But when I had my daughter, the thing that I swore was my daughter was always going to live a better lifestyle than I did. And as long as I'm doing that, I feel like I'm okay. And she does. She's involved in a lot of different stuff. We're able to provide things for her that sometimes people aren't able to provide for their children. Since I don't have to, bend over backwards to keep up with the Joneses and pay all this different money and whatever else, that allows me to be more philanthropic. I can give to the Humane Society. For those who haven't seen anybody running around, there are 7 cats in this house, so I am kind of a crazy cat lady. But I love animals, and I would much rather make sure that 20 cats eat today that are starving in shelters and about to be put down than for me to have an extra 1,000 square feet on my house. It just doesn't make that kind of sense to me. If you are that person who has that extra 1,000 square feet, more power to you. I'm not hating on you for it. You had to make your own choices in life, and what's important to you is important to you. This is just what was important to me. People who meet me sometimes think that I'm unprofessional or whatever else because I'm not wearing a suit. I'm the broker who's going to come visit you in jeans and a polo. I just am. And the reason why is because I don't want to be the person who comes in there with the air that I'm better than you or any of your employees. Your employees feel more comfortable talking to somebody who's dressed like they are.
I think that in all of our industries, like especially service industries, there is that one universal stigma, like we're supposed to look a certain way.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I got that. You're gonna be lucky if I don't wear my Wonder Woman costume coming in there. So be careful.
On the upside, your Wonder Woman costume's a lot cooler than my golf shirts. But obviously, if we're in a super professional environment, if I'm going to enroll in an attorney's office or a CPA's office where everybody's in a suit, then sure, I'll dress for that occasion.
Right.
But more often than not, that's not who our client base is for whatever reason. Maybe they just identify better with me. I don't know. But we certainly have attorneys' offices, but we also have big O tire shops, and we have several of those. We have the rescue rangers, we have the construction companies, and those guys we just seem to have a good synergy with, the blue collar worker type of places. So it just works. But obviously success for me, I would love to be able to leave behind lots of money for my daughter. I'd love to be able to leave behind lots of money for my wife. But living here in the moment and trying to take care of them best, as best I can is just way more important.
I love that. So Jeff, I appreciate you being my guest here on Small Business Small Talk today. Do you have any last fun words that you would want to, like anything funny that we need to impart people to? It's just our style.
Gosh. So you say, do I have any last words? And immediately the first thing that comes to my mind, because I am who I am, is Beavis and Butthead. So in the movie, he asked if you have any last words, and the words that come out are, well, I have a couple, butt cheek, but so I won't go there. But
no, you totally went there.
Yeah, as an affinity partner, here's what I'll tell you. For people who are out there, if you have, because our affinity is Colonial Life for the chamber's purposes. If you have voluntary products as a business owner that you're offering right now, if you have an Aflac plan, I can save you money. If you have a Colonial Life plan, I can give you better products, because as a preferred broker partner of Colonial Life, I get better stuff than even their own employees get. I also may be able to save you money. So if you have either of those two products, please reach out. If you have any questions about insurance, I'll be happy to answer those. You don't have to be a client. You're welcome to do so.
So how do they reach out? What's a good way to get in touch with you?
I'll give you a couple ways. So the first is our office, 502-791-9300. My personal extension is 101. If you want to just type that in, you can bypass the IVR there. You can reach me at jeff@jenpale.com. So JEFF and I'll spell Jenpale for you, JEN like Jennifer, PALE like she doesn't go to the beach.com.
Stop.
And then our website is www.jenpale.com. Yeah, I never intended the whole Jennifer and Pale because she doesn't go to the beach thing as when I envisioned the name. Then the name actually, and because I get asked about it so often, the name is actually something that I thought to myself, there's only so many river cities, derby cities, and commonwealths you can have in a certain area. And I wanted to do something to where people, if I came up to them wearing a name tag in a networking setting, it didn't scream insurance, so they didn't run away from me.
Right.
So what I did was I started looking at the family and building an anagram. So JE are my initials, Jeff Elder. NP is Natalie Page, that's my daughter. ALE is Anna Lynn, my wife. So it's truly a family name. It's something we
that, and I never knew that.
Yeah, so we get asked about that a lot. The unintended genius of the situation, because I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I truly feel like a genius because everyone asked that. Our ribbon cutting for St. Matthew's, we got asked that, and so it's been a great starting point for conversations, but it never crossed my mind that it might be a great starting point for conversations when I was thinking of it. So unintended genius is a thing, folks.
It is. It absolutely is. So again, Jeff, I want to thank you for being our guest here on Small Business Small Talk for this episode of season 2 in 2020. Join us again for the next episode. It'll be released next week. You can always subscribe to each of the channels, any of the channels that you're listening to through Spotify, YouTube, Anchor FM, or even our Facebook page, whichever. If you want to watch us, just listen. You can take us anywhere. You can even ask Alexa to play the latest episode of Small Business Small Talk. And what do you know? That little bugger will actually do it. So with that, I thank you guys for listening, and we'll join you again next time on Small Business Small Talk. I've been your host, Christy Smallwood.